Welcome to the panel discussion of Women in Tech, the Netherlands, and proudly supported by SAP Business Women's Network. My name is Grace Galdos, and today I am here with my colleague Sinat Farhad, and together we will be co-hosting this event. We have great speakers. We have speakers from Tessa Schoenfeld from VHTO, Tine Dubois from Microsoft, and Alexander van der Ploeg from SAP. And later, my colleague Sinat will tell you more about these fantastic speakers. And I also would like to, I hope that you are safe in your home office or maybe in your holiday destinations, because now is holiday season, of course. And one of our speakers here, Tine Dubois, she's joining us from Ghent, from her vacation. Thank you very much for your commitment. Also Tess and Alexandra, because you are doing this on top of your, professional commitments at this moment. So now, today we are going to talk about best practices of digital inclusion. And please, Sinat, I would like to give you opportunity to introduce yourself as well.
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Zinat Farhang. I am a consultant at an IT company called CGI in the Netherlands. And since January this year, I'm with Women in Tech, the Netherlands chapter. Together with Grace, we are co-hosting this great event, and we have amazing panelists today with us. From my point of view, digital inclusion is a very hot topic, and I'm very excited for this event. If we want to really just dive into the discussion, Grace, about digital inclusion, for us, it's of course very important to have the diversity. In Women in Tech, we try to promote the diversity in tech, but also on the other side, it's also important to look from the tech side and see if tech is inclusive and how tech is inclusive. Actually, for many audience groups, for women, but also for different age groups, for people with different ethnicity groups. So it's always very exciting for me to look at different aspects and what is the experience of other people and other organizations in this subject. So my question is, for example, Grace, have you yourself maybe identified some opportunities for digital inclusion, maybe in your daily work or daily life? I'm very curious to know.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. First of all, I think we all need to be aware about the importance of digital inclusion. According to the World Economic Forum Future Jobs report, more than 50% of employees worldwide will need to reskill. So, and when you think about this, is that we all need to get the opportunity or create the opportunity to improve our digital skills. So don't wait. If you don't have the opportunity to do that, look for these opportunities. And in my case, I was fortunate. I work at SAP in the marketing organization, and marketing is going through a digital transformation as well. And they are the digital skills are very diverse in our team. So what SAP did last year is start a development program together with the Digital Marketing Institute. So they are investing in, closing the gap in digital skills. So I was part of this program. I follow an intensive training for half a year, and I gained these skills, this knowledge, and I am better prepared now for my role as marketeer at SAP. And I am sure that these skills are not only relevant for my role as marketeer, but for any future role at SAP or, also what I'm doing here at Women in Tech as well. So this is my personal story. I am very thankful. But even I was thinking, when I don't have the opportunity because my company won't be investing in my skills, I think there are another ways we can always look after. So I encourage you, in case you are working in a company, but to ask for the opportunities you can have there. And if not, because of budget or whatever, look for organizations that can provide you these opportunities, like Women in Tech, for example.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. Yeah, it's nice to hear that you have a positive experience with tech and how tech was inclusive for you. I think from my point of view, as a point of view of a consultant at an IT company, I see many opportunities every day, and I think we can also change. Inclusion is definitely a mindset, so we also need to change and work on that mindset for all the companies that work and do something with technology, and think about what product are we making and who is actually using the product. I'm not only talking about user experience, the UX, that's very important, of course, but also from the very beginning of thinking and designing a software product or an application, a website, anything in tech, we need to think about the audience and who is going to use it and who are we actually forgetting at the design step. So that's all said. I'm really excited to give it to our speakers and panelists. I want to introduce our great panelists one by one. And also I'm going to ask all three of you to include in your introduction some parts about yourself, who you are, and what you're excited about, and also what actually digital inclusion means to you, and why do you think it's important. I would appreciate it if you can include that. So let's start from Alexandra. Alexandra van der Ploeg is Head of Social Corporate Responsibility at SAP or SAP. Alexandra, welcome. We are very happy to have you today with us, and we're all ears. I hand it to you.
Thank you so much, Sinat and Grace, for having me. Very excited to be with everybody today. I'm even more excited because this is a panel where moderators are actually able to pronounce my surname. I'm usually in environments where with native English speakers or other from other backgrounds and languages, very rarely Dutch, and because of that, they very rarely know how to pronounce my surname. So it's quite nice to be able to be here and hear somebody pronounce my surname correctly. So thank you for that. As I was introduced, I was thinking about what digital inclusion means to me, but maybe first a few things about myself. So I head up corporate social responsibility globally at SAP. You probably all are aware of SAP, the company. We have over 100,000 employees worldwide. The area that I'm responsible for is really looking at how we as a company can make a difference from a societal perspective, particularly in the communities where we live and work. But we don't just look at this from a purely philanthropic perspective. We're basically also saying, look, while we want to look at how we can create societal impact and make a difference in the world, and we should also look at how we can create value to the business. So basically create a two-way street. And I've had the great pleasure and honor to be working in this field now for about 10 years. I came into this as a complete novice. My background is in human resources originally, and I moved with a volunteer project into the CSR organization in 2010. And very honestly, I knew nothing about CSR. I had a passion for social entrepreneurship. I had a passion for pro bono volunteering. But I knew very little about sort of the role of corporate social responsibility within the context of a business. So it's been an incredible journey the last 10 years. And it's been very exciting to sort of see the journey that we have been on in moving the needle very much from taking a pretty philanthropic approach towards CSR, towards trying to be as strategic as we can be in terms of maximizing the impact that we can create on society, and at the same time also create value to the business beyond just purely corporate responsibility or corporate reputation, which is frequently an area that many companies look at when they do CSR. They primarily look at it from a corporate reputation perspective, but it goes well beyond that. Digital inclusion is something that is actually sits at the heart of everything that we do in CSR at SAP. And that's very easy to understand because our mission statement of CSR at SAP is to power opportunities through digital inclusion. So digital inclusion is already part of our mission statement. And I'll talk later much more about, what that means and what we particularly do. But I want to give you two examples, rather than sort of me explaining what I think digital inclusion is. We look at it from a broader societal perspective, right? So the people or the audiences that we work with are usually young people from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds, communities, and nations. And I'll give you two examples, very concrete life examples. So there's, on the one hand, Bala. Bala is 20 years old. She lives in Gaza. And she recently concluded a so-called Reboot Camp Digital Skills Accelerator program. Very intense program that provided 1,400 hours of learning to her. She was somebody who comes from a region with 80% youth unemployment. From an education perspective, typically there's very little tech skills that is provided in the school curriculum. So she came to this program with very, very few computer skills, very little knowledge about technology beyond being a user. After 1,400 hours of completion of this program, she graduated and after 1 month was hired as a full stack software engineer at a fintech company in the US. She's working virtually out of Gaza. But basically what this did is this program provided her with an opportunity to not just learn incredible skills, but it provided her with an opportunity to find a job in the IT sector and find gainful employment. And this basically is setting her up for life. So this is one example of what digital inclusion means. So this is a young woman who had zero knowledge, zero access, and with one intervention, she is now in a position to be in gainful employment and to create a career for herself. It's the second example I would like to share. It's a very different one. This is out of a rural school in Mauritius. And there were 5 kids who decided they wanted to participate in a virtual challenge called the African Code Challenge last year in 2020. They were supported by their teacher. It was the first time that anybody not just in their school, but in their village was participating in a coding challenge, in a tech challenge. And they became one of the finalists. They were one of the 5 finalists. And I will never forget the moment when they were introducing themselves at the final event. The teacher was actually in tears. And the kids were very, they were very shy. It was the first time that they were on camera and they were presenting the game that they had coded. And the teacher was in tears because what she said is, you cannot imagine what it means for a school like ours in a rural area where we live to be part of a final and to be recognized globally for the work that we have been doing. This has never happened to us. And you cannot believe it, but the entire village is sitting outside of this room and is cheering us on and is so incredibly happy that we've been able to reach this stage. So these are two examples of very different examples of digital inclusion and what it means to potentially be digitally excluded. So I think what I'm most excited about is basically one core thing. In all of this time that I've been working in this area, what excites me most is this era that we're entering, where I believe that there's true collaboration and partnership happening across different sectors and also within sectors. I think, unfortunately, in the past, we've had a tendency to address things in silos and in isolation. I know a lot of companies that are like us are engaged in digital inclusion and in education. And we're all sort of doing drops, right? We're all doing like these little piecemeals, but that doesn't really create transformative change. But I am seeing that there's an incredible willingness to work across the board in a multi-sector collaborative fashion with each other. And that is something that I'm most excited about, because that's where I think transformation and systems change will happen. Back to you, Zinat.
Yes, thank you, Alexandra. That was great to hear how you and your team are making a difference. And as you said, it is all little drops, but that's little drops make the ocean. So let's just look forward to bigger changes, and also the audience is very excited and blown away by your examples. So thanks for making the digital inclusion example more tangible for us. I'm gonna go to our next speaker, Tine. And Tine Dubois. Tine is customer success team leader at Modern Work at Microsoft. Tine, thanks for having this to make this actually possible today. I know that you're on vacation and you could simply enjoy the beautiful scenic centrum of Ghent, but thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Zinat. And indeed, I am here in Ghent. I'm making a little bit publicity for the city, but I also believe that that is part of digital inclusion, is to be able to work from wherever you want, like a digital nomad. As you rightly explained, I'm responsible for leading a team in the Netherlands that works on modern workplaces. We help them install for some of the largest customers with a headquarter in the Netherlands. And I'm pretty passionate about digital inclusion, because for me, that's very much linked to what you find a lot nowadays. Many teams are very diverse, with people from a lot of backgrounds. So how do you make this diversity work? It's not just by hiring people with a variety of backgrounds. The real work is actually to make sure that they are included. And in the digital world, even more so, because there are other types of barriers. On my own team, just to give a flavor, I have like 37 people working in that team, 3 different roles, 4 generations at work. A work generation spans 10 years in work, and 13 nationalities. I personally believe that in such a world, it is important that you focus on what I call digital optimism, because it's not always going right in the digital world. But if you look at it with a positive lens, it gives another vibe than if you would look at all the barriers. And secondly, I truly believe like diversity can only work if you focus really a lot on making sure that everyone feels included. What it means for me is, first of all, that you can come as you are. That also means like, I'm on holiday, no makeup, I'm just here with my t-shirt, that's okay. If other people in the other side of the digital table are well dressed up, that's also okay. And if you don't feel like turning on the camera, that's also okay. So that is for me just part of come as you are. Don't be afraid to show yourself with or without makeup, or in whatever type of style, good day, bad day, that's one. And secondly, why the topic is so close to my heart, it is really linked to a value of justice. Since I was a quite young kid, I don't like things when they are not right. And if I tie that to digital inclusion, it really means that although I am a profound believer that technology can make our world better, in reality, I see that there are still many challenges on the road. There is no equal access to or mastery of the technology. And I truly believe that everyone should have equal access to a digital world. My background, study-wise, is a linguistic teacher. So I've been occupying myself a lot with fighting analphabetism. That's why I would say, like, for me, the fight now is not so much anymore in our Western countries, the fact that people cannot read and write, but it is really about becoming digital literate. It's all those digital skills. And I think that the pandemic that we all are still living through is actually highlighting how big this gap really is between the people that have access to the digital world, that are mastering the digital world, and people that are not. Just a couple of facts. For example, elderly people or people with disability, did you know that only 1 out of 10 has access to it? That shows already a lot, like how acute this problem actually is. The other one is the mastery. Like, we know that even in Belgium and the Netherlands, which we supposed to be high on the index of digital literacy, we still have 40% of people that have no digital skills or too basic digital skills. So that means by default, 40% of people around you, 4 out of 10, are excluded of the digital world. And personally, I believe that as such is a great opening to start a debate how we can improve also those people to feel included. And with that, back over to you, Zinat.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Thank you, Tina. That was a great message. I think that you had also. I see it in the comments from the audience. Come as you are. Yeah, I think that's one thing that this past few years we all have learned from working at home, that yeah, we have to sometimes show up with the camera off, or sometimes we are in a meeting and we have to actually interact with our kids, our family, or the pets around us. So they are a part of our life, and we cannot change the fact. Thanks for your introduction, Tina. I'd like to go further with the introduction of our third panelist, Tessa Schoenfeld. Tess is a project officer at VHTO. Tess, can you please tell us a little bit more about you and VHTO and your great work there?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Sinat. Hi, everyone. So I'm Tess. I'm a project officer at VHTO, and we are an expert center based in Amsterdam, and we focus on increasing gender diversity in the tech sector. VHTO was established many, many years ago with the goal to increase participation of girls and women in the world of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And to date, we have reached over thousands of girls with our activities. We really try to bridge the gap between them and the world of technology. And in a way, we try to demystify the jobs that are available in the tech sector. We've done this in various ways, by connecting girls to role models, such as yourself, by raising awareness around gender biases in the education system, and by making sure that girls have equal opportunities to build IT skills and self-confidence in IT. For me, personally, digital inclusion is that every child, regardless of its sex, has an opportunity to develop an interest in IT. And right now, unfortunately, that's not the case. We really know from research that to develop this interest in IT, you need to have meaningful interactions with IT. For example, programming lessons. And that really enhances the likelihood that you also choose a career in this direction. From studies, we know that certain things inhibit girls from choosing a career in technology and IT. For example, girls have very low self-efficacy related to their skills in IT and tech. And a way to improve these self-efficacy skills of girls is by ensuring they get equal access and equal opportunities as boys have to develop their skills. This means that all children in schools should be given the opportunity to build their programming skills. Another important reason as to why girls are less likely to opt for a career in this direction is because they have this stereotypical image of a programmer being a guy who sits behind this computer all day without having any social interactions, for example. When girls actually start programming lessons themselves, they have less of this stereotypical image. We also know that they have a very limited pre-existing knowledge of IT. Outside of the education system, they don't get a lot of input into IT-related topics. So therefore, female students have a disadvantage when they start an IT or tech-related study. And it's definitely easier for them to jumpstart their careers if they have the same of pre-existing knowledge as their peers. What I'm really excited about is that we've started a petition to address these issues and to enhance the opportunity for frequent, meaningful interactions for all children, but especially also girls. And we want to ask our next government to embed digital literacy in the curriculum as soon as possible. And we would greatly appreciate it if you would support us with this cause by signing the petition. I think that the importance of digital inclusion is a threefold. Firstly, it creates equal opportunities for every child. Children learn at a very young age what kind of professions are deemed appropriate for them and which are not. So they are discouraged to follow a certain path based on their sex. Many children do not get the same opportunity to explore their interests in the field of IT because they simply don't get in touch with it. They don't have these meaningful interactions. And in the Netherlands, digital literacy or IT education is still not embedded in the Dutch education system, which means that they can choose whether they want to implement it or not. The IT sector is a very thriving sector with lots of job opportunities and relatively better wages. And we want to make sure that all children have equal access to this sector when they grow up. Secondly, we have the economic reasons. As we have the ongoing digitalization of our societies and further increase of the need of tech talent in the future, we have a lot of companies with a lot of vacancies that they can't fill if they don't reach out for women and other underrepresented groups. Various studies also shown that there's a statistically significant relationship between a more diverse leadership team and better financial performances of companies. We also know that they have better revenues, better employee satisfaction, and improved quality of decision making. And finally, digital inclusion enables better technologies for us as a society. We know that technology is very important and a defining factor in our society. So we cannot really imagine our lives without tech, but we make technology and in turn technology shapes us. And if we really want to benefit from this technology as a society, it only makes sense to ensure that the tech sector is more diverse and that it represents more groups from this society. And with that, I would like to hand it over to you, Sinat.
Yes, thanks. When it comes to VHTO, I get extra super excited because I know what VHTO is actually aiming for, and your goals actually line up with the goals of Women in Tech pretty nicely. And we're very happy to partner with you on your activities. And as you said, promoting the petition is actually sounds very nice to me, and I will definitely look at it. And if you want to share the link with us, please do, and I will share it with the audience. Thanks for that. And now that we all know about our panelists, I would like to hand it to Grace for the second part of our event today, the panel discussions.
Thank you, Sinat. And I would like to dedicate some time also to our audience. Our audience is very international today. People joining from different continents, from countries, from Nigeria, India, Italy, UK, Spain, of course, the Netherlands, the US, and everybody making very nice comments about your intros, ladies. Thank you for that. Your message is resonating very well in an audience. So I encourage you to ask your questions because now in this part of the event, we will be able to answer your questions. So let's go with the first question we have here is, what are the steps the organization is taking toward digital inclusion? So you already, Alexandra, mentioned some examples, but maybe also Tina, would you like to share a little bit about the steps your organization is taking in this field?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's important to know that also, just as the case for SAP, for us, it's an intrinsic part of our mission. Our mission is actually to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And for digital inclusion, it actually means that it is a priority for Microsoft in our day-to-day processes, ensuring that we're doing the most we can do to bring technology to those who need it. And much more than just a global initiative, we also try to make it local. It is something that we are already doing since the early 90s, where we have seen several steps. Like in the beginning, it was much more about learning and talent development programs, where we would help people to discover their talents and then develop it and train them. Like nowadays, it is much more something where we are partnering, not just within Microsoft, but also with business partners, with NGOs, other types of organizations, like amongst those ones as well, VHTO, Tess. And the idea is actually that in everything that we do, we try to bring it in. We tie it around 3 big pillars. There is a pillar about raising awareness about digital inclusion. The second one is about planning for digital inclusion. And the third one is to also look at our technology. We are a technology company, so how can our technology also drive digital inclusion? If you look at the first pillar, the pillar of the raising awareness, we actually believe that it starts with self-reflection, because inclusion, very often times, it is a learning journey. We all have our biases, and it actually means like become aware about what works and what doesn't work to make someone feel included. With that, for example, we do a yearly inclusion week, where we have sessions for employees, but we also engage in those sessions people from outside of Microsoft. And it is something that we also tailor to our local communities. Think, for example, about the session that we hosted in the UK. We know that besides sessions in English, we also needed to do sessions in Spanish and Chinese. So we hosted 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And also content related to the audiences. Like, for example, for youngsters, we organized Minecraft coding sessions, but with the digital map of London, and also done by young people, because they learn then from peers instead of from teachers that are maybe a little bit more far away from their own life. And for people of 50 plus, for example, we organized then web browsing sessions, because it's different sometimes for people that are a bit elderly. They might need other type of content. At each of those moments, we also make time to reflect on what that actually means for us, because we are not always doing it right first time. And one of the things, and I liked it a lot, Sinat, because you mentioned it as well, is already in the design phase, sometimes things can go wrong. When we launched like 8 years ago Surface, which is the small computer tablet of Microsoft, we discovered actually after 2 years that we were on the market that 85% was bought by men. And then, of course, marketeers start to look, what's the reason why men are buying it and women are not buying it? And one of the things that came out, and it sounds very silly right now, but it was just reality, was that our design team was composed of 100% out of men. So we decided to change it to make a more mixed design team. And out of that came actually a totally new product line, because in the design of the product, it appeared that some very good arguments what a product needs to look like to be appealing for the women, we simply discarded. It was not taken into account because the group was not diversified enough. And that was a very big learning, because out of that, actually, we have now a design charter for every type of product, where our design teams need to be a representation of what we call the human population. So it's not just about men and women. It is just about making sure that our mix, we try to make sure that it is as close as possible to the population mix of humanity. But I just wanted to share that, because this very first part about awareness, this was now an example of a design team. But every day you can make for yourself an assessment about whether you have been inclusive or not. And that's maybe the biggest lesson learned, is that we strive to create a self-reflection all the way through, with multiple systems, official ones, but also smaller ones, in every one-on-one, for example, which I have bi-weekly with my team, it is also just a topic on the agenda. To question ourselves, have we been at some moments not inclusive? Have we been aware of that one, or should this be something that we need to investigate again? The second pillar is about planning for digital inclusion, because it's not because you plan it on a mission chart that you will immediately realize it. It is really something, a conscious effort, conscious activities to make, and things about commitment and dedication, but also investments in infrastructure or embracing a lifelong learning mindset are key components to get started. And for us, all of that is important because it makes part of your organizational culture. Three things are things that we consider important. The first one is that you make the technology and the courses available for everybody in the company. I want to call that out because you have quite a lot of companies where you have, for example, frontline workers or people's job who is not in the first moment very digital. They tend to be excluded also by the employer for using a computer, for having access to certain software. But we believe that everyone should have access to it. And that also as an employer, it's important that you provide those accesses. The second one is the mindset about skilling. And there was a question as well about the digital skilling. Also, that is an ongoing journey. It's not finished. But it is kind of a lifelong journey because as we are evolving, those skills are also evolving. And the way that one is learning is also something that tends to be very individualized. So the final pillar about planning for it is also to offer help to learn the tools, because it helps so much if you have someone around you that just shows you instead of all the self-service and what have you. It also helps if you have people that can offer you help. And that's why we also came to our third pillar, which is like, let technology do the work for you. Sometimes it's easy to make sure that technology is giving you tips and tricks or makes it easier for you to go digital. And one of the things that I like most is, for example, the accessibility checker, which is a standard product if you use Microsoft tooling. You can just check at the end of when you have, for example, written a document or made a PowerPoint, you can just check how accessible your product is for every audience. And believe me, the first time you use it, it feels a little bit like being at school and you get something back with red everywhere because you have like 100 things where you need to reflect whether it was accessible for everybody. But personally, I think it is a good tip because there is a lot of those things where you have a natural tendency to believe that it is clear for you, that is just calling out that it might not be so easy to understand for example, people with dyslexia or people with a hearing impairment. And I like it a lot that it's actually doing the work for me. And with that, back over to you, Grace.
Thank you. Wow. First, I'm impressed about how structured the way of working you have to make sure to put this in practice at Microsoft, digital inclusion. Something that captured my attention was the self-reflection and link this to relevant content for the audiences, because I think it makes even more relevant for people. And also, I love the design charter. So you making sure that different audience are included. So I think it's a two-way street, digital inclusion. So making sure that your team is digital inclusive, but also making sure that the solution that will come out of it will be inclusive for the audiences. So thanks for sharing this best practice, Tina. And I would like to also ask you, Alexandra, you mentioned during your introduction some best practices, but maybe would you like to elaborate a little bit in one of them?
Yeah, I think it was more to demonstrate what digital inclusion can and also should mean from a wider societal global perspective, right? And I just want to elaborate on that a tiny little bit before I dive into one example. I think what a lot of people aren't aware of, or they might be sort of slightly aware of, is we're actually in a global learning and education crisis. And the skills gap that we're seeing in the IT sector and in the private sector in general is just a symptom or a sign of that global education crisis. And I'll just give you one statistic that I think that every time I hear it and see it, just actually makes me cringe, and I wonder where things are going. By 2030, 50% of the world's youth will not have the basic skills for employment. That's over 50% of the world's youth, basic skills for employment. Now, if you layer on top of that the challenges of a digital economy and the fourth industrial revolution, you can imagine the pressures that educational systems are experiencing. One other statistic, and then I'll dive into an example. Closing the skills gap has enormous economic potential, right? So if education systems were to successfully address the skills gap for the future of work, as much as $11.5 trillion would be added to global GDP by 2028. $11.5 trillion. I mean, so we're talking about massive dimensions here, and I think what we are, you know, again, just from a purely CSR perspective, and not so much from a business perspective, what concerns us is that, particularly because of the pandemic, inequity and unequal access to quality education has widened quite significantly. And you know, you don't even need to talk about digital literacy in that instance, but that obviously gets exacerbated even further. So we're trying to do is create a continuum of interventions that range all the way from igniting an early passion and interest in technology amongst young people that might not naturally have access to it, all the way to creating very concrete employment opportunities in the IT sector. And then there's a whole range in between. This means we operate in about 113 different countries. But you know what? One of the key things that we have realized is that if we're not able to work with government and with ministries of education, a lot of that work that we do is like a drop in the ocean, and before it even hits the ocean, it evaporates. So one of the programs that we consider one of the most successful ones is one that's called Africa Code Week. Africa Code Week is actually really simple. We're trying to bring basic coding skills to African youth. In 2019, before the pandemic hit, we were able to reach about 5 million young people with Africa Code Week. But the key thing about Africa Code Week isn't so much the number of youngsters that we're reaching. It is the number of ministries of education that we're actually working very closely with. So we're able to operate in about 44 countries on the African continent, and we're working very closely with 24 ministries of education. So they're directly involved, and their part is basically not just to provide access to the schools, but they include our coding training into the teacher training, so that the teachers are enabled to host coding workshops and to embed coding into their school environment in a more frequent basis. Our ultimate goal is really that African nations start embedding a coding curriculum into their national school curriculum. We've been able to do that in 7 countries already, which is more than, I live in Germany. Coding is not part of the German school curriculum. So it's more, you know, we've been able to achieve more in some of those countries than here in Germany. So those are just some of the basics, right? And coding doesn't even, that's just a tiny part of what digital literacy and digital skills obviously mean.
Thank you, Alexandra. These really are shocking numbers, of course. When we are thinking that by 2030, so in less than 10 years, there will be, less opportunities for the youth in case they don't take any action. I mean, in this case, they don't need to take an action. Of course, they need to learn the skills, but is a call to action to companies, to the governments, to the educational system, to make sure that these skills are integrated. So and that's why I'm very proud to be part of Women in Tech and SAP Business Women Network, and these kind of organizations that are making all that is possible to close this gap. And last week, there was an article in the Dutch paper, in a Dutch paper. There's this picture of a baby in there, and in the title of this news is about the differences start immediately after birth. And here are more talking about the differences depending on which kind of family you are born, which kind of opportunities you will have, not only regarding education, but also regarding your health, the way you are being taken care of as a child. But on top of that, we are talking on digital skills now. So I really hope that we keep, all of us and all people in the audience, keep the good work to make sure this gap will be smaller in the future. And now I will hand over to Sinat for the next question.
Yes, of course. Thanks, Grace. Yeah, it was very interesting to see examples of digital inclusion and examples of SAP and Microsoft. Now, I'm a little bit curious to know, Tess, about how are you actually in VHTO getting things done in terms of digital inclusion, if you think about planning, support, budgeting, if you can share a little bit of your best practices with us.
Yeah, certainly. So we are an NGO and we have around 10 people. We are funded partially through the government, but mainly through donations from companies such as SAP. We are very grateful for that collaboration and for being given the opportunity to really work on our mission. And we work towards our mission by really lobbying for gender inclusive education, but also to train and consult teachers and education programs on how to become more gender inclusive. And we advise schools as well, also companies, on what steps to take to attract more girls, but also to keep them interested and happy in their environment. So we really also work on implementing evidence-based interventions, and we implement those in primary schools and secondary schools to really get girls and women connected to each other, so they also have role models to look up to.
Yes, exactly. Now, yeah, and also on top of that, the petition that you said, I think.
Yeah, definitely the petition. Yeah.
Yes. Let's see. So I actually shared the link of the petition in our chat with our audience, and it's accessible. We will make sure to share it on our platform as well.
Great. Yeah.
Yes, Grace, I would like to hand it to you for our next question.
Yeah.
We're also a little bit short on time.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I have a question for you, ladies. When are you succeeding with a digital inclusive initiative? When do you say, yes, I reach my target here, I make the difference? When you reach this point? Maybe, yeah, it's the question for Alexandra. Maybe you would like to answer this question.
I mean, I think, look, one of the things that's become clear out of this panel conversation, what's been so interesting is sort of the different perspectives, right, that we've all brought into the topic of digital inclusion. And I think that shows how big and all-encompassing the topic really is. So I don't think you're ever done when it comes to digital inclusion. So I don't think you can ever say, oh, great, we're done now. We've got it sorted. But I think the absolute key thing is that whatever part of digital inclusion you're tackling, you have to build your outcome and your impact into your plan right from the beginning. So you basically need to know what you're shooting for, right? And what the impact is that you want to achieve. And unfortunately, and I can speak for myself as well here, also in our team, sometimes it comes as an afterthought. We sort of like, oh, you know what, we want to do this and that. And then only later we think about, what is it ultimately that we're really trying to change? So that needs to guide the conversation, but then you have to break it up into smaller steps. And I think that really depends on the program that you're driving. But we, as I said, I don't think we can ever sort of say I would never say we've succeeded because there's always so much more that you can do. But as long as you stay true to what you're trying to drive, the impact that you're trying to achieve, and you're breaking it down into manageable, sizable chunks, then I think it makes it easier to also then start telling the story about, we've reached this particular milestone. For us, the key thing is to make it a bit more concrete. It's never a numbers game. So I was earlier mentioning, that we reached 5 million kids. That sounds great, but ultimately it isn't that great, right? Because have you really changed a young person's life? Probably not. You've been able to reach them, you've impacted them in some way, but the long-term effect isn't really all that high. What is much more significant in a program like Africa Code Week is, for example, when the Ministry of Education comes to us and says, we're now going to embed it into our school curriculum. We're ready for it and we're doing it. Can you help us do it? That's what I would call success, right? So when you can start seeing the actual influence on an educational system. And I know that sounds really broad and very vague, but it's just been, over the 10 years that I've been in this field, you have to do the hard work, and the hard work is unfortunately very time consuming. It's 2 steps forward, 10 steps back. And you can't do it alone. You have to do it in a multi-sector approach. So that's a bit of a fluffy, airy-fairy answer to when do you succeed.
No, thanks. To me, it means that you are always trying to go to the next mile for this purpose, and that is only good, I think, for the people who can benefit from these initiatives. And now I would like to give the word to the audience, because we have a lot of questions from the audience, and we are almost about to finish the event. So Gerda Slachter, she's asking, what is the best advice you would like to give to organizations who are at the start of working on this topic? Thanks for your question, Gerda. And maybe Tina, would you like to answer these questions? Sorry.
I would say, the most important for me to get started is to start from the person and from the organization's culture, because I truly believe it is a mindset as well to be embraced, and also something that you need to anchor in your culture. So this means as an individual, people need to commit, but also your organization needs to commit at organizational level. So very important that it's not just staying with a couple of people, but that in a company also people right from the top start to communicate around it and embed it as an intrinsic piece of the operations. And I think that was also, you could feel it as well in the story of Alexandra, because she also mentioned it's actually anchored in the mission. So I truly believe it's a personal mindset to foster, as well as making sure that leadership is endorsing it. That's what I would suggest.
Thank you, Tina. We have another question, but before we go to another question, I would like to ask you, Tess, because of course I know that the VHTO is working with also different organizations, is funded by different organizations, and which advice would you give to companies who would like to support VHTO?
Well, we have great opportunities for partnership programs. we really would like to get in touch on that as well. It's like with our funding, we can make a lot of impact towards the girls that we reach, but also towards the education programs that we reach. So I would really suggest, getting in touch with us and having a look at what you can do to contribute to our cause.
Thank you. And another question from Carantoine is, what is the one thing that is not being done enough and should be done in order to achieve digital inclusion? I mean, 3 of you have seen a lot, have done a lot, but what is something that you think it is still missing? Maybe Alexandra, you have seen a lot.
Yeah, I think again, taking this more from a global perspective and from tying it to the educational side, right? I think, despite what I said in the very beginning about what I'm most excited about, I still don't see enough collaboration, even amongst companies, right? We have so many initiatives when it comes to digital inclusion and education and workforce readiness. And everybody's sort of tweaking a little bit to their liking so that it fits with their business objectives in the best way. And I think sometimes what we forget is that that all of these are drops and they make a difference. But if we keep working at it in isolation as we're doing now, we're never going to solve the problem from a systemic perspective. So I think what we're still not seeing enough is basically true partnerships, deep partnerships, and collaborations that force every single party to leave their ego actually a little bit at the door and to say, okay, this is actually the common goal that we should be working towards. And yes, we can all bring our core competence and our strengths to the table, but that shouldn't shift the goal, right, in a different direction just because we would like to see it that way, so that it fits better with our own organizational objectives. So that's what I would like to see more of. This true systemic approach and understanding that there is a common goal that we need to pursue, and we all have a part to play, but we can't just tweak things to our liking, right?
Thank you. Great addition, Alexandra. And I see many other questions that you can look back in the chat after the event, and please feel free to answer the questions. And people are also willing to get in touch with you. So what would you suggest in order to get in touch with you? Is connect via LinkedIn maybe an option? Yes. Okay, great. Well, please free to connect Alexandra, Tina, and Tess via LinkedIn. And I think we have reached almost the end of this event. We could keep talking another hour, of course, with all your experience and insights. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for joining us, for from different perspectives, from a corporate world, from a non-profit organization, working on digital inclusion, focus on girls and women, but also focus on the less privileged communities or communities, let's say, and also for making the difference at the workplace. So I think this was a very rich content we offered to you. Thanks a lot for that. And Sina, would you like to mention something else?
Of course, no, thanks to all the speakers and to all the audience today. But I also want to add that we got a great support, of course, from Women in Tech and SAP to make this event happen. So thanks a lot for that. Our great people of Women in Tech global team, but also, of course, thanks to everybody.
Thanks a lot and have a great day. Bye.